It's great to welcome to the program today the Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. And what a day, of all days to be on. I woke up and started to see what's in the news today, Governor, and I see many stories about the visit that Donald Trump made yesterday and your appearance with him. And I'll be upfront, we are big fans of yours on the show, and we think what you've done in Michigan is phenomenal. And we're seeing some of the backlash to the visits with the president. So I just want to start kind of at the beginning with you. I see governors really as administrators of states. And in a sense, you need to work with the federal government. And so for me, when I see governors work with presidents across party lines, that doesn't seem like a huge surprising thing to me because there are areas where governors depend on the federal government. Talk to me generally about your approach to working with the federal government, whether or not it's a Democrat or a Republican in office. Maybe we'll start there.
Yeah, well, thank you for setting the table like that. I appreciate it. I'm really glad to be with you, and I appreciate all the different work that you do. I'll just say this. When I took my oath of office to be governor of the state of Michigan, it was an oath to put the people of Michigan's interests first, above my own interest, above any other interest. I am the governor of Michigan, and I've got to deliver balanced budgets. I've got to get shit done. I've got to work with whomever I can in order to do that. And, I think some of I think consternation in this moment is in my first term, I had a very contentious relationship with the Trump administration. And, infamously got threatened with kidnapping and murder plot
Yes.
because I was telling people, trying to keep Michiganders safe and asking them to wear masks and stay at home to be safe. Now, I show up at the White House because I know how important this base, Selfridge Air National Guard base, is to the Michigan economy. And I get, I criticized by some in the pundit class. But at the end of the day, the same values drive both of those decisions, and it is what's in the best interest of the people of Michigan. So I can weather the ups and downs of it if I feel like I'm making a difference for Michiganders, and that's what it's all about. It doesn't mean that I don't fight important fights, and certainly there are a lot of things that I don't agree with the current administration on, and we are fighting. But my ability to seek common ground is driven by my North Star, which is the people of Michigan.
Right. And so for people who may not know the backstory, you met with the president a couple of times to secure funding for the Selfridge Air National Guard base. Why that issue in terms of what you chose to lobby Trump on rather than anything else?
Well, I'll start with this. I've got a list. I've always got a list of to-do list, right? In my personal life as governor, and when I show up at the White House, I'm trying to cover as much ground as I can. So, Selfridge is an important thing. Our A-10s, the fighter mission that we currently have, that plane is being retired. And so getting recapitalized is really important, not just for the base, not just for Homeland Security, although those are two important things. It's important because this base is really the linchpin to about $850 million of economic activity in aerospace and defense sector in Michigan. It is the linchpin to three other bases as well. I didn't just talk about Selfridge at every opportunity. I've talked about tariffs and what all the chaos in tariffs has wreaked on the Michigan economy.
Yeah.
I talked about Asian carp, which is an invasive species, which is at risk of infiltrating the Great Lakes. And we are home to the Great Lakes. 20% of the world's fresh surface water is in those beautiful lakes. And we have ice storm victims in northern Michigan that I'm advocating for as well. So I've always got a list, but Selfridge has been an important part of every conversation I've had with the White House. And I'm just so happy that I can check that off my list, and I'll stay focused on all the other things, and I'll keep adding to my list.
So let's maybe go chronologically and speak first about the visit to the White House. There was this viral image of you with, I think it was a 3-ring binder, although maybe it was a notebook in front of your face, and it led people to react all sorts of different ways. Why was she there at all? If she planned to hide her face, or why did she stand there as Trump made bogus election fraud claims? I want to give you an opportunity to kind of explain the picture first, maybe, and the binder. What was your thinking with that?
Well, I'll share with this. I was there to advocate for Selfridge and for ice storm victims. That was the whole reason I was in Washington, D.C. I had had a one-on-one with the president previously. Well, his chief of staff sat in it, so I guess it was three people in the meeting. But
Yep.
I was led into what I thought was going to be another meeting of that sort. And to my surprise, it was a room full of press and cabinet members. And I took one of his aides aside and I said, "What is going on here?"
Mm,
And they said, "He's just going to sign executive order and then you'll have your meeting." So I was stuck. And
wow.
to my surprise, it was a whole lot of uh, rhetoric and actions that I vehemently opposed. And so I think part of what was lost on people was that I started in the front of the room and gravitated to the end. And by the thousandth picture it felt like was taken of me, I held my folder up. I didn't want to be there for any of that. That was not why I was there, and I was opposed to it. And eventually I walked out of the room. No one reported that.
Yeah.
It made it look like I was there for any of that was wrong. But I had to stay for my meeting, which was after all of that. And so I did. And all the grief that I took for covering my face or just even being in the room, you know, that's all a part of, I think, the moment we're living in, and I get it. But I was there for Selfridge, which we got done yesterday, spectacular announcement, and for victims of the ice storm. And I don't apologize for that. My job is to show up for Michigan. I was angry about being put in that situation, though.
Do you think you were set up deliberately in this sense? The last time I was at the White House, President Biden was president. Everywhere we went, we were constantly told, here there are cameras. When you walk by here, you could be photographed. This is private over here. This is off the record. Do you believe that this was a deliberate setup to put you in this situation, or was it lack of organization or wherewithal, or the schedule got mixed up?
I don't know. I really don't know. And I don't want to cast aspersions, but I'll just say I was not happy about it. It was not what I was under the impression was going to happen, and certainly nothing that I would ever endorse or want to be associated with. So, last time I was at the White House, I was brought in at the tail end of a meeting he was having with a different group.
Yeah.
And, it just seems like maybe things move fast there. And I don't know. I can't
Okay.
explain it, but I wasn't thrilled about it, to put it
Okay,
lightly.
before we talk about tariffs, let's talk briefly about yesterday. So the president goes to Michigan. There's this another picture now of you. I think it's shaking his hand. It sort of looks like you're facing the camera. He's kind of blocking you. I think you're shaking hands. And then he brings you up to speak at this first event that he did. You seemed surprised, to be honest, that you were being invited to speak. I think you said, even in fact, I didn't know that I was going to speak. Sort of same question. I mean, I'm starting to sort of get the sense that this is being done deliberately to put you in this situation. But what was your reaction when then again you're asked to speak and it's sort of unclear the circumstances, what you're supposed to say, what you're supposed to talk about?
Yeah, well, I think they do a lot of things off the cuff. I'll,
Okay.
I'll just say that, whether it's policy making or actions like that. I don't think that Secretary Hegseth had it anticipated speaking. He spoke as well there. So I took the opportunity though because on behalf of Michigan, on behalf of the men and women of that particular base and their families and all the businesses that rely on that base, I wanted to say thank you, and I did. This means we were able to find common ground on this. It doesn't mean that we don't still have very different views on the world and on values and the rule of law for that matter. But this was a good thing for Michigan as the governor. I'm really proud that we got it done, and I'm grateful.
So let's now talk about a little bit of policy and how the state of Michigan and your day to day is being affected by what's happening in Washington. There's sort of like a few main categories that I think I would want to get your thoughts as to what's the day to day that's most relevant to you. There's the kind of slide towards authoritarianism and lawlessness and lack of due process and deportation of people with temporary legal status or more without due process out of the country. This affects workforces, this affects local law enforcement, et cetera. That's like one category, one pillar. We have the economic, which is primarily tariffs. We just learned that the GDP contracted in the first quarter of 2025 for the first time in 3 years. There's concerns about empty shelves by summer, et cetera. So there's sort of like the economic. And then there's everything we might call foreign policy. As governor of Michigan, which of these areas are you contending with and dealing with problems as a result of Trump policy in your state on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I would say all of the above, but I'm going to focus on tariffs. The chaotic tariff policies have already it's already being felt by Michiganders, by Michigan businesses. People have been laid off. People are seeing their costs go up, their savings go down. I don't think that most people in Michigan voted for losing their life savings or losing the job. They were hopeful that they were going to get lower costs, actually. And so I think that there's a real sense that all of this chaos is costing us our livelihoods, and it's dangerous for Michigan's economy. That's part of, I think, is something that we're all going to feel eventually if we're not feeling it yet. I would add, the economic policy absolutely is a part of the international, right, policy. Canada, Canadians are like our neighbors, our friends, our cousins. We are practically related, Michiganders and Canadians. If you've ever been to a hospital in Detroit, you've been taken care of by a Canadian nurse. I mean, this is a relationship that is so important to Michigan and Michiganders. And the level of hurt and now anger that we are feeling from our Canadian friends and neighbors because of what's happening, because they're being treated not like allies, but adversaries, is comes with a big cost as well as you think about just even Canadian tourism, much less all the other important economic ways that we are intertwined. So this is, I think, the most salient issue that Michiganders are feeling on a day-to-day basis. When we think about all the other constitutional issues that we are combating and that we are
Yes.
in court on, that obviously is of high concern as well. But if you stay grounded in the economics, it's undeniable that we are feeling the brunt of the uncertainty around tariff policy and the tax that is being foisted onto everyday, hardworking Americans.
Why do you think Michigan flipped back to Trump in 2024?
Well, Michigan's always a state that is swings, right? We are a state that is a bellwether for the country. Michigan, like every swing state in the nation, marginally went for President Trump. I think it was because people thought that their costs would go lower. By far, that is what I hear from people that they were hopeful of, and now they're feeling betrayed because their costs have only gone up and their savings down, or their ability to get into a higher paying job has been compromised because business isn't making those investments because of all the uncertainty. So it's all related, and I think the personal economy always drives voter behavior.
In other words, it was the perception of the economy under Biden combined with at least the plausibility that Trump would fix some of what they saw as wrong with the economy.
You just said it better than I did. Yes.
Governor, I know that your priority, of course, is being governor of Michigan, and you're not announcing anything today. But are you thinking at all about 2028?
I'm always thinking about, the future. I've got kids who are 23 and 21. I am thinking about them and their rights and their livelihoods and their ability to live the lives they want to in this country. I'm always thinking about that. So I'm staying focused though on my job through 2026, making sure that Michigan has great, strong Democratic leadership going into 2028. That's going to be so important, regardless of who's at the top of the ticket. But I hope to always have an impact on writing whatever that future looks like. I'm not sure that I need to be the main character.
All right. Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, we really appreciate your time today, and we're going to keep an eye on your work in Michigan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Good to be with you.